This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we have a Samsung dryer that is not heating the clothes very well, not drying the clothes very well. And when I tested it out, I started up a cycle, let it run for a little bit. This is an electric dryer. I wanted to see if there was any heat being generated. Sometimes some parts are messed up and you have to change them because the heating system isn't working. What I found out though is that this dryer actually was heating the clothes really well, but still wasn't drying them very well, and that usually points toward not a dryer that's having trouble, but a vent tube that's really clogged somewhere. So I got all the clothes out and then I removed the filter. I noticed the filter wasn't sitting down as far as it should, so I pulled it out and looked inside the filter well and noticed it was full of lint and garbage. So I used this tool that can grab. You can get this at like Amazon. Pretty cool little tool. And I found that there was a lot of crud in there. I found a dollar bill, I found a lighter, I found a set of keys, and I would just reach in with this tool and grab lint and then pull it out. I had to do this maybe 20 times because it only grabs a little bit of lint at a time. I was able to get this filter well nice and clean so the filter would sit all the way down, but I pulled a lot of lint out of there. So that was one of the main reasons that the dryer couldn't get rid of the moisture, couldn't get rid of the heat, because it was full of stuff. Look how much stuff was in just that little filter well. So it was a great little tool for getting this junk out. And probably here's all the stuff that was also caught in there. Even a set of keys. Probably, maybe 7 or 8 years of accumulated junk to get it to this point. So the next thing I had to think about though is, I wonder if the dryer vent tube's okay. It's a bit longer than it needs to be, and it has a bunch of right angle turns. And every time you have a right angle turn, you're making it harder for the dryer to get rid of the lint. And also I noticed the dryer tube was crushed in a couple of places because they had the dryer pushed too far back against the wall, and it actually crushed the tube. It made it really hard for the dryer to get rid of the moisture. So I reached in with my hand and just kind of pushed the tube back into a round position, and I took a tool that comes from linteater.com that is about 12 feet long, comes in 3-foot sections. I pulled the dryer out so I could get in here, and I took this tool and I made sure that the brush always turns clockwise, always turns to the right, and I use it to clean out this vent tube because it had a lot of stuff caught in it. There was actually a credit card caught in the vent tube, so it was just poor dryer. It was doing its best, but just couldn't get rid of the heat, couldn't get rid of the moisture because it was just full of stuff, fully obstructed. So I went in there first with my tool for about 3 feet and just cleaned all that out. It's a pretty cool tool. It rototills, and then after it cleans it, as you pull it out, it pulls all the dust back out, all the lint. Noticing too that the lint a lot of times was somewhat wet, and that points toward the moisture just not being able to leave the house. This house was set up where the vent tube, when it goes out, it goes straight up. It makes a right turn and goes straight up through the roof, which is very commonly clogged, and it's a very bad design. A lot of condos have this. Some of the modern builds have this, and the longer that vent tube is, the harder it is for the dryer to get rid of the moisture, the harder the dryer works. And if you have a vertical rise where the vent tube leaves your roof, it is probably the worst design. If you have that, it's okay. You just have to do this vent tube cleaning more often. So I'm just trying to get this tube nice and round again. And when I reinstalled it, I made sure that the dryer was not pushed way up against the wall. And I told the homeowner that it's important to keep it away a little bit so that there's a nice straight line for that heat and moisture to leave. So now that I have that clean, what I want to do is use the same tool to go into the tube that goes into the wall and up through the roof. Do a little more cleaning of the vent tube. And what I needed to do is actually climb over the washing machine and get back into this area so I could control the direction of the tool. So when I pushed it into this horizontal tube, it goes back about maybe 10 inches, and then there's a right turn, 90-degree turn, it goes straight up. So by climbing back in there, I could control the tool a little bit better and force it up into that 90-degree turn. Also, again, I noticed the lint was very wet, and that's unusual. That points toward moisture trying to leave the house, but it can't get out because there's something obstructing it in the vent tube. So now I'm behind the dryer. I'm going to push it up in there. I'm going to force it to come up slightly as I spin it and push it in. Now I'm going to disconnect it from my drill. I'm going to add another 3-foot section. This is just an ingenious little tool. It costs about maybe $30 on Amazon, made by linteater.com. So I spin in my next 3-foot section. I add that to my drill. I got to make sure the drill always turns to the right, always clockwise. If I spin it the wrong way, it'll undo a section inside the vent tube and I'll never get the tool back out, and that'll actually obstruct the vent tube. So I'm spinning it as I go back and forth. Really neat. It's kind of like a bottle brush tool, and it just cleans that vent tube. Now I'm adding another 3-foot section. So now I'm 9 feet in. And basically I can hear this thing inside the wall. It's going up higher and higher toward the roof. This little Milwaukee drill screwdriver tool. It's about $90 to $100 at Home Depot. It's a great tool. It's just, you use it all the time, and it does a great job. It has a little light on it too. So I'm just spinning, and then I'll add another 3-foot section. So now I'm 12 feet in. And again, I just got to make sure I'm always spinning to the right, always going clockwise. So if you do think that in your house or your condo you have a vertical rise with your vent tube, I would buy one of these tools, and I would do the same procedure. It takes you about 20 minutes, about every 6 months. And it's good for fire prevention, because if you had a bunch of lint clogging the tube and the dryer couldn't get rid of the heat, it is possible that the lint inside the dryer can catch fire. Usually it burns really fast, but if it kept burning, it could catch other structures on fire. Every year there are a lot of house fires due to dryers. And the only reason dryers ever have that problem is if the vent tubes get obstructed and they can't get rid of all that flammable material, all that lint. That lint is just made up of little clothing fibers, like little pieces of cotton, little pieces of polyester. And combined with oxygen, it's a perfect type of a flammable material. So you don't want that stuff building up in your machine or in your vent tube. This procedure can also be done from the outside going in, which I recommend because it's less messy. In this case I couldn't do that because I couldn't get on the roof, so I had to do it from inside out. Now as I'm pulling my tool back out, I'm getting a lot of lint, and a lot of it again is very wet, which is a little bit more difficult to get rid of. But that's a sign that this thing is really clogged, and that for a long time moisture was not able to leave the dryer. So the poor dryer is working much harder and much longer than it needs to dry the clothes. And eventually the customer mentioned that it just wasn't drying the clothes. Not the dryer's fault. It's just that it couldn't get rid of the moisture. So I'm getting more and more junk out of there. Kind of a fun thing to do, kind of satisfying, because you feel like, hey, this is really going to make my dryer work well, going to save energy, save time, and you get all this crud out, less fire danger. I ended up shortening this tube quite a bit. I cut it down to about half its size. Now I'm just forming the tube into after I did the cut, into the best circle I can before I put it back onto the ducting. I'm going to kind of pinch in on the ducting a little bit to help feed this tube back on. Push down and I'll twist it a little bit. We get it like a couple inches over this ducting. I got my nice clamp here with a 1/4 inch nut on it. Now I get that super tight. And after all this, the dryer did great. So again, nothing wrong with the dryer. It was just full of junk. I noticed that since the filter was not pushed all the way down, a bunch of big weird things got caught inside the mechanism, which shouldn't happen. I had a lighter, which is really dangerous, and a couple of dollars, and some keys. So I got plugged back in. I'm going to climb back over the whole thing, just kind of spin myself around. These machines are tough. They can hold up your weight. And then what I need to do is just push the dryer back in, but not as far as it was previously, so I don't want to crush that tube. If you can ever get a configuration where you have no turns, where the dryer tube goes straight back into the wall, that is the best. Every time you introduce a 90-degree turn, you're limiting how well this dryer can get rid of moisture. So now when I tested it, heats up great. You can hear all the crud getting pushed out of the machine. And again, I would do this maybe about every 6 months. So I hope this is helpful to you, and please subscribe to our channel when you get a chance. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.